Hello, everybody, and welcome to the New Year's Eve edition of the Ephrom Josine Show. I am your host, Ephrom Josine, and yes, it's going to be the last show of 2018, and we're going out with a bang, it looks like. First off, Elizabeth Warren has officially announced an exploratory committee for her to run for president, which basically means she's running for president. She released a 4-ish minute campaign ad, which I personally thought was okay. You can look the thing up for yourself. She sort of tried to do what Julian Castro did, which is just sort of go, listen, I grew up poor, therefore I should run the country. Which, of course, didn't work for Julian Castro because he's a disaster. He's the man who increased crime in a suburb by over 1,700% in 6 months, not making that up. But of course, she couldn't do that due to all the controversy around her heritage. Which, on a side note, can I just ask why Harvard never asked her to take a DNA test? Like, at some point, you're just asking for people to abuse the system. But I'm going on a different tangent. Of course, Warren has gained a lot of popularity with the left, especially considering how one of her first real major appearances in public was through Michael Moore's film Capitalism: A Love Story, which I personally thought was okay. Nothing great, nothing awful. It's, if you like Michael Moore, you'll like the film. If you don't like Michael Moore, you won't like the film. It's actually pretty simple. Of course, she, because she's Elizabeth Warren and is very good at talking about policy, also talked about some policy, most notably the decrease of unions in our country. After the Reagan administration, she even played a clip of Reagan talking about that, and the absurd amount of tax cuts for the rich that have been going on since the Reagan administration. And she even showed pictures of people like George W. Bush and Newt Gingrich and the aforementioned Reagan, signing tax cuts into law and things like that. Well, I guess Gingrich never signed anything into law, but you know what I mean. Of course, we're going to do a quick little breakdown on Elizabeth Warren's policies. I think my biggest disagreement with her is probably her stance on free trade. As you know, Warren is an absolute critic of free trade. She even supported Donald Trump's plan to rewrite NAFTA. And I am, for the record, a vocal supporter of free trade. And I believe we shouldn't be doing any of these tariffs right now. We shouldn't be doing any protectionism. I believe in a complete free trade market. I believe in open trade. I cannot make that clear enough. So that is something that I'm going to very much disagree with her on. And I feel like she shouldn't really play with that. She's also a little bit more of a hawk in some scenarios than I would like. Of course, she's better than basically any other senator when it comes to that, because she has supported doing things like getting out of Afghanistan. However, she's also voted a lot of times to increase defense spending, even when she could have used that money to pay for her free college plan. Like, honest to God, if you look at even the increases that she's voted for, she could have paid for free college, and I believe another study said universal health care for several years. If she would have said, no, I'm voting for this instead, I'm getting rid of that, and we're going to vote for this instead, it's going to be much better, it's going to lead to a lot better results. Because the fact is, the military doesn't need any more money. Sorry, it just doesn't need any more money. If you honest to God think the military needs more money, then you are beyond naive. And I just don't take you seriously at that point. She also does this thing with marijuana that I'm against, which is, if you do not know my stance on marijuana, it's basically just legalized at a federal level. And Warren is doing this. I think states should have more power to legalize it, and it shouldn't be and they shouldn't have to deal with any of the regulations the FDA's already put up. And no, just say you're for legalizing it nationwide. Or at the very least, start the premise of it's legal on a federal level. And if states want to make it illegal, then they can do that, because then they have to go through all sorts of things. For instance, one of the ways that our current system really screws over people is, say you have a mental illness, like PTSD, and you take marijuana for that, which has actually been proven to be very useful. You can get fired for that if you work a job. Same thing with most. And you can't go to the Americans with Disabilities Act for that, because that's a federal law and marijuana is a state issue. So no, what you should do is you should make it federally. It's just not a Schedule 1 drug. And while we're at it, you want to talk about things make Schedule 1 drugs, why not make alcohol a Schedule 1 drug? That's far more dangerous. Why not make tobacco a Schedule 1 drug? That's far more addictive. And both have much less medical benefits. And then, if the states want to make it illegal, that's fine. But the states can't make it legal. They could only make it illegal. And then I guess they could repeal it and make it legal later, which is what I'd prefer personally, but you get what I mean at this point. So will I support Elizabeth Warren in 2020? The answer is she's my second choice right behind Richard Ojeda. And she's my first realistic choice. What do I mean by that? Because I love Richard Ojeda, don't get me wrong. I think he's right on all the issues. Well, with a few, I think there are a few exceptions, but I think he's generally a good centrist left-wing candidate. And then Warren's a little bit farther than I'd like in some issues. He's a little bit farther right I like in some issues, a little farther left in some issues. I don't like all of her issues as much as I like Ojeda's. And I think generally Ojeda is better on all the issues. However, Ojeda is a state senator, Warren's an actual senator. That sounded rude, actually. State senators aren't real senators. My God, I'm slowly turning into an elitist the longer this show goes on. By this time next year, I'm just going to be on the framework. Listen, what we really need is we need Tim Kaine to be president. That's what we really need in this country. That was like a weird Richard Nixon accent at the end. That's a Futurama reference for you. Or is that a Star Wars prequel? I don't even know what I'm referencing anymore. That's how annoying this is getting. But anyway, Warren has a better shot than Ojeda does, and personally I would encourage a realistic campaign for her. I think, although I will say, if Warren is probably going to win in your state in the primary, she's probably got a chance at that point, that I'd say back Ojeda as a protest vote is more or less what I'd go with. Similar to how there were people who did protest votes for Jill Stein in New York, or Gary Johnson or Jill Stein in Texas. A vote for Ojeda is more a protest vote than anything else, and if your state is very competitive, I'd encourage you to go for Warren at this point. And mind you, out of all three realistic candidates, which is her, Ojeda, and Delaney can just go away. I don't like him at all. I think he's the most obnoxious person running right now. Give me all of John Delaney's policy. You just can't because he doesn't have any. Yeah. However, where was I going? I just hate John Delaney. That's what I'm getting at. That's what this whole episode was. It was just a giant way for me to insult John Delaney. However, and this is a big however, if you theoretically want a realistic candidate, it seems like Warren is better at playing ball with the establishment than Ojeda does, and some people may prefer that. However, looking at the candidates, I'd still go Ojeda personally. Even if I think he'd be a less effective president, I'd prefer someone who, at the end of the day, isn't trying to stab you because they don't have any hands. And Warren is just a little bit out there on too many issues for me to really give her an endorsement. But that's it. I'm Ephrom, and good night.